Emily Wilson, and this is a story I wrote called The Test. I recently turned 16, and of course, the only thing I wanted to do was get my driver's license. I had done everything I needed to. I did all my online driver's ed. I watched every drunk driving video. I had all my driving hours. And I filled out every stack of paperwork. The only thing I needed was for someone to drive me to the DMV. So I asked my dad, Emily, tomorrow you have to run with Llamas 5K in the morning, and in the afternoon you have track practice. Okay, Mom? Sweetheart, tomorrow you have to volunteer at the Animal Rescue Center and read to the elderly at the retirement home. I don't think it was ever really in my parents' plans for me to drive. They're just way too obsessed with doing everything they can to get me into college. My dad seems to think the way to go is through athletics, which is fine because I've always loved playing sports and being part of a team. But he has me doing everything, from pole vaulting to shot put to fencing and cross country, and it's a lot. But at least whenever we go to practice, he lets me drive the Jeep. My mom, on the other hand, thinks the way to get into a good school is through clubs and community service. When I was at track practice a few months ago, she actually went to my school's club fair for me and signed me up for like 50 clubs. And on top of that, she started a new one in my name, the Daddy-Daughter Club. This month, we're hoping to increase our membership by 100%. If I can get my dad to join. So anyways, I spent the rest of the afternoon calling around, trying to find a place that could take me in between volunteering at the Animal Rescue Center and track practice. I finally found a place, but it was way out in the hill country. Now all I had to do was convince my dad to drive me, wake up in the morning, go run the 5K, volunteer at the animal center, drive to the DMV, make it back in time for track practice, read to the elderly, and I can do this. You know, I could go Ivy League. I have the test scores for it. So the next morning at 5 a.m., my dad and I woke up and started to load the Jeep. Animal first aid kit, shot puts, fencing suit and sword, 13-foot pole vaulting poles strapped to the roof, a left running shoe, right running shoe. Yes, I have to list them separately because I am not running another race with one shoe. A box of Daddy-Daughter Club t-shirts, and sugar-free peanut brittle from my bestie Gladys. Gladys is my best friend at the retirement home. She's just a great listener, even without her hearing aids. So with the Jeep all loaded, my dad and I were off to the Llama 5K. It was actually going to be a really cool event. The llamas were going to run with us during the race, and all the money raised went to help a struggling community in Peru. And it was also just a great day for a race. I felt amazing. For the first mile and a half, then one of the llamas mistook my ponytail as a bouncing bundle of hay. I don't know if any of y'all have ever run with llamas before, but they're surprisingly strong, fast, and determined animals. That llama just sprinted after me, pulling its screaming handler behind it. And the faster it ran, the faster I ran. And the faster I ran, the more my ponytail just bounced and teased the llama. So all three of us just sprinted through the rest of the race. Me, the llama, its screaming handler, through the finish line, past the crowd, straight to the parking lot where I hopped in the Jeep and I slammed the door in the angry llama's face. And then, splat. Llama spit all over the windshield. And then my dad came running up with my first place medal in his hand and that stupid grin on his face. He was ecstatic about my new personal best 5K run time. So the next stop was the Animal Rescue Center. And when we finally got there, y'all are not gonna believe this. The first patient of the day was a porcupine with a rash and runny nose. So while the vet started plucking quills out of the two guys that brought it in, It was my job to put aloe lotion on the porcupine's rash. How do you put lotion on a porcupine? But that's when I had an idea. I ran out to the Jeep and I put on my fencing suit. And with that, I shortly had a very soothed porcupine. So finally, the next stop was the DMV, and I was so excited. So we left the animal center, porcupine in tow to be released into the wild. My dad actually made a nest for him in the back of the car out of the Daddy-Daughter Club t-shirts. Let's face it, Emily, you're never gonna need any of those. Oh, hurtful? The drive started taking way longer than I thought it was going to. And on top of that, the more I tried to wipe the llama spit off the windshield, the worse it got. And the porcupine started getting restless in the back. And if I didn't make it to this appointment on time, it'd be 3 weeks before I could get another. And in 3 weeks, all my paperwork would expire. If my paperwork expired, I'd never get my license, and I'd never be able to drive. And I can do this. You know, I could get a great education at any state school. Finally, up ahead, we saw the DMV. And right as I turned into the parking lot, the porcupine found Gladys's peanut brittle in the back and started to settle down. The driving instructor, Mr. Bob, was actually super nice, and he was super excited as soon as he saw the Jeep. Well, looky there. I've been thinking about getting myself one of those. Let's take her out and see what she can really do. And with that, Mr. Bob had me pop the curb behind the DMV and head straight up a steep dirt road. The dirt was horrible. It started caking into the llama spit on the windshield, and I could not see anything. Yee-haw! I love this car. Somewhere between the bumpy ride, running out of peanut brittle, and Bob's yelling, that porcupine lost it. It launched itself out of the back and clamped onto Bob's ear. Bob shook his head, so the porcupine landed in my lap and I slammed on the brakes. A shot put came flying out of the back and crashed into Bob's ankle. Yo, that daggone cannonball done broke my ankle. So I stopped the Jeep and I ran around to the back to get the animal first aid kit. I helped Bob out and I bandaged his earlobe and splinted his ankle. And right as I looked up, I saw the porcupine was releasing himself into the wild. And as he climbed up a tree, I saw my Jeep keys hanging off his quills. I can do this. Community college is great, and it's so close to home. I knew what I had to do. I grabbed one of the pole vaulting poles off the top of the Jeep, and I strapped my fencing saber to my waist. I took a step back, and I vaulted myself up into the tree. I drew my sword, and I used it to gently flick the keys off the porcupine's back. I shimmied back down the pole, and I ran back over to Mr. Bob in the Jeep. Mr. Bob looked horrible. His face was red and swollen. I don't know what's going on. Only thing I'm allergic to is peanuts. And maybe peanut brittle eating porcupines? So I helped Bob back into the Jeep and I drove him to the nearest hospital. While they were wheeling him away, I worked up the courage to ask, Mr. Bob, did I pass? If I don't ever have to see you or that daggum Jeep ever again, then yeah, you passed. Yes, I didn't even have to parallel park.